Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. You ever hear the phrase, it's all about who you know in this world? I mean, having the right connections is really one of the most valuable tools for success that you can have. Knowing the right people. I mean, in so many different ways, especially when it comes to business. You know what I do whenever I've had a job? I'll admit, anybody watching this, anybody knows me, I've been self-employed with Sinister City Motorcycles and many other businesses for quite a long time. But I have had other jobs, and whenever I've had other jobs, particularly if they're corporate style jobs, or I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, how many employees there are. I make a point to go and make friends with my boss, of course, my boss's boss, and the owner. It's just good to have connections. You really never know when you're gonna need somebody. It's always good to have a guy for that. I got a guy for that. What do you need done? I got a guy for that. No handyman, to know tree people, to know various things. If your house, stages of your house goes wrong, you always got somebody you can call that can come over and help fix it up, make it as good as new, somebody that you brag about. It's always good to have connections. It makes your life so much easier. Back in the old days, people had business cards. You know, I don't get business cards passed out to me so many. People still have them. I got them in my wallet right now. But they're not as big of a thing. I have a Rolodex in my office that's full to the gills of business cards from different connections, different people that I've met in various capacities over the last 30 years. I could look in there, that Rolodex, and find something for anything. I'm going to tell you a funny story just about having the right connection. You really never know who's going to turn into the right connection at the right time. I used to have a little bit of a reputation in the streets, you know, kind of as a thug, a no-good-nick, a hooligan. I was up to no good all the time, committing crimes. I moved out to Santa Cruz, California. This was 30 years ago. So the town may be different now. It may have a different landscape. But back when I moved out to California in the early 90s, talking 1992, it was full of gangs. And I lived down in Beach Flats, which was by the boardwalk. I lived about a block and a half off the boardwalk on Raymond Street. That's all Serranos, Southsiders, Mexican mafia gang members, all Mexicans. On the west side of town, up by Natural Bridges, and it's really beautiful up there. They have nice mansions up there. Arnold Schwarzenegger has a nice mansion up that way. But they also have surfer ghettos and kind of working class areas, and they have what's called the Westsiders. And they also have a enemy fraction of the Mexican gang called NF, Nuestra Familia, or the Norteños, the Northern Family. Those guys lay pretty low, but you would see these Westsiders, which was kind of a lower gang. A lot of white boys in the Westsiders, a lot of little surfer trash are in the Westsiders. Little suicidal tendencies, kind of wannabe guys. We got into it with the Westsiders from the day that I dropped into town, just kind of by dumb luck. And it was just repeated. Every time I would get into a fight with somebody or some kind of altercation, it was one of these Westside motherfuckers. This rivalry of ours went back and forth and escalated. I mean, me and my buddy, we robbed them one time, robbed one of their houses. That's a whole other story I should tell, a really funny story. They beat up my buddy, caught him one night, caught him slipping, beat him up, broke his collarbone. I mean, it was just going back and forth. We caught their leader of the Westsiders, this guy VC, Vincent Connolly. He was well known back in the Santa Cruz Westside days. And we caught him at the Red Room. That's their bar. Westsiders all wore red. And got in a fight with him and his crew, a few of their guys, and chumped them up. It just kept going back and forth like this. It was never ending. It was getting old, and it was starting to get a little ugly, especially when my buddy got his collarbone broken. They beat him up, I believe, with a 2x4. Surrounded him, whooped his ass. I used to know this guy named Richie. There's the Eastside gang, and the Eastsiders and the Westsiders had fought for damn near 50 years. You know, their uncles were involved in that shit back in the old days, back in the late 60s, early 70s, even earlier than that. Shit had gone on since post-World War II. Generations after generations of these little fucking poor white trash surfer fucks just always rivaled each other. And the East Side is really no different if you want to describe them. They're just the East Side. They wore blue. Everything on the East Side was blue. West Side is red. The East Siders, they have white boys in there, multiracial, surfers, poor white trash, meth heads, whatever. And this guy Richie, I used to see him at the bar that I used to go to every night. I hung out at this bar every night. This guy Richie was the king of the East Side. That's how he would introduce himself. I'm Richie, king of the East Side. And he was. At first I thought he was just talking shit, but it turned out he was. Richie was the king of the East Side. That was not just something he liked to say. That was the deal. He was the leader of the East Side gang. He would talk often about the West Siders, complain about them, because that was their main enemy. Every East Sider's sworn enemy is a West Sider. I would start to complain about the West Side too, because if he would bring them up, I'd be like, fuck those motherfuckers. Yeah, I beat their ass the other night. We caught their leader, beat his ass. We robbed their place. I would tell Richie all this stuff. He'd get a good laugh out of it. So me and him became friends on that respect, and kind of tight. You know, he would overly hugging. He was a little Italian guy, and he'd hug you, real touchy. I'm not a big touchy-feely kind of guy. Richie was. But I gave him a lot of respect, and he'd show up to the bar with 12 or 13 of his little East Side boys. They'd all be in their fresh gear. They would have just went out and bought new boots. They were all proud of them. They had to show me the boots, and I'm going down the line of 12 or 13 guys, and Richie's like, and look at these, and these are, and tell me the different models of boots. I'm not a big fashion guy. I don't know a lot about boots, man, but yeah, nice boots. So Richie was having these sit downs, these secret meetings with the leadership of the West Siders in order to have a truce that was like somehow monumental, because they've been fighting for the last couple generations, nonstop, this East Side, West Side rivalry. Some of the get-togethers just sound comical, like out of a movie, where they're meeting in these remote locations in the middle of the night, and all this kind of secrecy. So no cops show up, and no enemies can do surveillance, and nobody knows. And you know, I never really knew how to take Richie. He was just so over the top with his personality, kind of this little emperor of his own little world. So one day I saw Richie at the bar, like usual. He's with a few of his crew. He always had some of his boys with him, little East Side boys. There's a place called Pleasure Point, and you could often see the little East Siders hanging out there, so people call them the Point Boys, which is kind of a funny name. So he's in there, and he's like, calls me over to his table, and I go sit over to him. And he's like, so we had a meeting last night. He's always talking about these meetings lately. So I was just like, all right. And has to go through the initial story of where they met and how stressful it was to get everybody in the same room, get everybody settled down. And he's like, so we hashed out a bunch of rules, and we have a piece. And he's like, and you know, told me the rules. They can come on our side, we can go on their side. Just nobody has to trip. You know, people can't wear their gang colors, and you can't commit any crimes. You can't claim any turf, whatever. You know, but we can mix now. We can breathe a little easy. Nobody's gonna get shot. Nobody's gonna run any missions on each other. And he's going off on these things. And I'm like, okay, you know, good for you. I still don't like the West Side. Fuck the West Side. And I think I said something like that. And he was like, well, but you guys came up, you and your brother. And I was like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, I brought you guys up. I mentioned you and Jason. And he's like, I told him, as long as we have a truce, you can't fuck with them. They're down with the Eastside, and you got to be cool with them. So all those beatings and all that shit, the collarbone that got broken recently, all that kind of stuff's got to stop. And they promise they're not going to do nothing with you guys. They're not going to go and do anything funny, but you guys can't do anything funny either. And he was like, so that means you guys can't pull nothing over there. You're going to ruin my reputation. If you guys fuck around over there, cause any trouble, break this truce, then I'm going to have to come after you too. You know, so you can't fuck with my respect like that. And I shook Richie's hand. I was like, you know, I wouldn't do that. Thanks. You know, at first I was a little annoyed because I was like, I don't need you to fucking fight my battles. You know, fuck the West Side. I mean, if you want it to, fuck the East Side too. But I didn't say that. I caught myself. And I realized, you know, this guy just did me a favor. He's a lot more mature than me. This guy had a lot more sophistication than I did. And he just did me a big favor. So I was just like, okay, I'll think about all my wild shit on my walk home. But I shook his hand, was like, thank you very much. And promised him I wasn't going to be the one to break any kind of truce. I wasn't going to fuck around. I just want all this shit to be over. And that was it. I never had any trouble with the West Side ever again. It's all about who you know in this world. Thanks for watching.